for the bonds that connect us across distance, time, and struggle, and for the stories that help us make those connections come. Let us worship together. We turn now to Gretchen Jones for our chalice lighting.
Good morning. May this chalice sustain us, though the wind has struck us hard, though fire has fallen on us. May it bring us together. May this chalice be a symbol of unity, hope, and blessing.
Good morning, All Souls. Today's service focuses on how the stories we tell can help us honor the past, grow deeper in our relationships, and learn more about our connection to all beings and many stories. Sharing stories requires vulnerability, and our opening hymn invites, "Come, sing a song with me that I might know your mind." I hope you'll join in singing and allow your voice to be part of our collective story this morning. The words will scroll on your screen.
sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Once again, hello and welcome. My name is Mel Hardy, and I will be serving as one of your worship leaders today. I use he, him, his, they, and theirs as my pronouns. And welcome to a community where our search for spirituality and our passion for social action are both central. Where reverence for the earth and belief in the dignity of every person informs our ethics. Where music is an expression of our joy and acts of justice are a symbol of our hope. Welcome to this place where all people, people of all races, national origins, creeds, gender identities and expressions, sexual orientations, ages, and abilities, where all people are welcome at this table of love and fellowship. We extend a special greeting to our congregants and visitors from around the world and those joining us for the first time. If you would like to receive our weekly email bulletins, please send a direct message to Gary Penn in the chat. It is important to recognize the people who lived on the land where our church now stands. The closest village was Nacotchtank, from whom the name Anacostia is derived. They were part of the Piscataway group of First Nations people on this land, and we reflect on our role in building the beloved community. We summon our communal strength to intercultural acts of loves across the ethnocultural spectrum of humanity, to include our First Nations brothers and sisters. We acknowledge that Indigenous peoples were here before us, are here with us now, and will continue to be with us as we look to the future. Let's take a moment of silence to reflect on whose land we each reside in our many locations around the US and on our planet Earth. Now, we will greet each other in a time of beholding. If you feel so moved, please turn on your camera, put your zoom on the gallery view, and scroll through the pages of Beautiful Souls. You can wave, say hello in the chat, and behold one another as we continue to create online community together.
Good morning, all souls. I'm Dolores Miller, your Director of Religious Education. Today's story is actually the story that we saw last September at Homecoming when our theme was story. It's as Jen says, sharing our stories helps us deepen our connections to others and to other stories. Now, you all know that I love stories. We all have one. Well, almost everybody, except maybe one of the people in today's story. Enjoy.
Once there were three people who were traveling together. As day turned into night, they grew cold and tired. They looked for a place to spend the night, and up ahead they saw a cottage. They knocked on the door. An old woman answered.
What can I do for you?
May we come in? We need a place to spend the night. We'll gladly pay you.
You are welcome in my home, but each of you will have to tell me a story.
Sure, gladly.
The third traveler said nothing. After they had warmed themselves and had some soup, the woman said,
Now I will have a story from each of you.
I have a very funny story to tell about.
and she told a story about a friend who played tricks on people. The woman laughed so hard she almost fell over.
And now your story.
My story is sad.
And she told a story about some very lonely people. The woman wept.
And a story from you.
I don't really know any stories.
Everyone has a story. Has nothing happened to you? Tell us about it.
I don't have any stories. What's the fuss? I offered to pay you.
Well, if that's the way you feel, get out of my house.
And she kicked him out without a coat or shoes. He knew he had to find shelter quickly, so he ran to the next house. But when he looked in the window, he saw the most astounding thing. A snake ready to pounce on a sleeping person. So he ran to another house. But when he looked in that window, he saw a huge mountain looming over another sleeping person. In alarm, he ran to a third house. And there, when he looked in the window, he saw 3 people sleeping very peacefully with 3 little flames dancing over their head. Well, he had no other course of action but to go back to the house of the old woman. He told them about the snake, the mountain, and the flames. Then the woman spoke.
Now listen well. In the first house, that was not a snake you saw. It was a belt that had been left out. It was a warning to you to put your clothes away. And in the second house, that wasn't a mountain. That was a pile of toys that had been left out. Don't be lazy, put your toys away.
So, what about the third house?
The third house. 3 people were sleeping peacefully after they had shared their stories. Each story turned into a flame that kept the house protected so that no harm would come to the sleeping people. So that's why it is important to have a story in your heart and on your lips.
The travelers never forgot her words. And from then on, wherever that third traveler went, he always had a story to tell. Of course, it was always the same story about the time he had been a man with no story.
Ooh, let's give a virtual round of applause and amen to all those amazing storytellers and story producers. Good morning. I am Rob Keithan, your Minister of Social Justice, and I use he, him pronouns. It's wonderful to be back after a month of leave and be part of a fantastic worship team this morning. While today's service recognizes the anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August of 1945, perhaps more importantly, it recognizes and celebrates the actions since then to build relationships and work for peace. Much of All Souls ministry in this arena is centered around the Hiroshima children's drawings, which you'll learn more about in the service. A documentary about the drawings entitled Pictures from a Hiroshima Schoolyard will air tonight on Maryland Public Television at 5 p.m. You can also buy it for home viewing at hiroshimaschoolyard.com. It is a very powerful film. Please be advised that it contains some graphic images that are not suitable for younger children. There will also be a program this coming Tuesday on Toward a Nuclear Weapons-Free World, Ethics, Social Justice, and Civil Society Activism. It's co-sponsored by the United Nations Association of the National Capital Area and All Souls Church. Again, that's this Tuesday, August 3rd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. The link for more information and free registration will be in the chat. Finally, a reminder that for the next 3 Sundays, August 8th, 15th, and 22nd, All Souls will be joining 4 other large congregations in the DC area for worship as part of Preaching Up the Potomac. Check your e-news for times as they vary according to the host congregation. We strongly encourage you to tune in to both support and experience the powerful offerings of our sibling congregations. We turn now to pastoral concerns. And we are sad to announce the death of Peter Saylor on July 22nd after complications from heart surgery. We are sending love and condolences to spouse Laura, children George, Fred, and Lisa. Peter was a longtime member of All Souls and active in many musical groups, including the Jubilee Singers. A memorial service is pending for the fall and will be announced soon. And we send healing wishes and prayers to several who are recovering. To Marita Lee, who was in the hospital this week for heart issues and treatment. To Anakin Frum, son of Sherry Gilbert, who just had elective surgery on Wednesday. To Claudia Liebler, who had hernia repair surgery last week and is now at home. To Maudie Taylor, the mother of Shirley Blakely, who has been hospitalized in Alabama for a few weeks. And to Fred Katz, who suffered a concussion after a bike accident this week. We send healing prayers and love to all of you and to your families. And in the silence that follows please say aloud the names of those you carry on your heart this morning. Spirit of life and love, God who transcends time and tragedy, be with us as we wrestle with the routine challenges of life, as well as those additional hardships brought on by the pandemic. Be with us also as we wrestle with the demons of our past, present, and future, the shortcomings and short-sightedness that led to such violence and suffering in our human family. Help us by opening up to each other across differences, by sharing our stories. Help us to tell the truth, to heal, to learn, and to build a better world together. Amen. Our reading this morning is The Great Family by William Ellery Channing. I'm a living member of the great family of all souls, and I cannot improve or suffer myself without diffusing good or evil around me through an ever enlarging sphere. I belong to this family. I am bound to it by vital bonds. I am always exerting an influence on it. I can hardly perform an act that is confined in its consequence to myself. I belong to this family. All others are affected by what I am and say and do. So a single act of mine may spread in widening circles through a nation or humanity.
I have many to thank for my discovery of social justice seeking activism, and it comes through this church congregation. I am Mel Hardy again, and I have the benefit of being a staffer at All Souls Church starting in April of 2002. From that time, my life has been predicated, howsoever unevenly, on activism for human flourishing and human betterment. On our website at All Souls, a reading of our church's social justice principles, paragraph 10, holds nourishing leaders and skills. And in that, having been so nourished, I play a role on the curatorial team for the Hiroshima Children's Drawings, nurtured by so many in this church. By way of background, in August of 2002, John Steinbach of the Hiroshima-Nagasaki Peace Committee of the National Capital Area brought a group of Japanese visitors to the church to see the children's drawings about which I hitherto had no knowledge. I had come to my role at the church as a longtime arts and culture advocate and professional. And upon finding the children's drawings in the safe and then displaying them in our library on the conference room table for the Japanese visitors to see, I was struck by both the aesthetic simplicity and their complexity that I saw in them. I was filled with questions, so many questions about how these works of art came to our church. I wondered about the matter of stewardship of these cultural objects from 1947. I then saw the visitors drawn to tears upon their seeing them. While their history is well known in Hiroshima and in Japan, it was at that moment, in my role as administrator, that we in the church were to build a new ministry. Later, Chuck Woolridge will expand on this in his sermon. Many joined in that ministry, and internal coalitions were built to preserve and conserve the drawings. Over time, they were presented for the first time to our National Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly in Salt Lake City with Reverend Louise Green and others in our congregation, and that was in 2009. Subsequently, in 2010, they went on tour with members of our congregation back to Japan to reunite them with many of the artists that could be identified by our new partner, Shizumi Shigeto Manali. We had an exhibition at the Hankawa Elementary School and Associated Museum on that tour. We developed relationships with our new Japanese friends and other communities of faith in Japan. As was mentioned earlier, a documentary film was developed with All Souls Church and the Hiroshima Children's Drawings as the central actors. As Reverend Keithan mentioned that film will be shown this evening on Maryland Public Television with information for access provided elsewhere during this service. Your curatorial team has also toured the Hiroshima children's drawings throughout the United States. From California through Minnesota to much of the Mid-Atlantic. Both Jen Heyman and Chuck Woolridge will present additional context and nuance about which our congregation is duly proud. Congregants at All Souls Church are represented in many of the global nuclear weapons abolitionist coalitions and institutions, including the United Nations and many domestic and international civil society activist groups. All Souls Church is known globally in the nuclear weapons abolitionist movement. Perhaps a spotlight, a highlight of my work with the Hiroshima children's drawings was our 2017 program on the marriage of our Hiroshima children's drawings with the Jacob Lawrence Hiroshima series. Many will know Jacob Lawrence is Migration series that is prominently held at our local Phillips collection. I knew both Jacob Lawrence and David Driscoll, who lent the Hiroshima series drawings to us. They were friends in my work in the arts and culture ecosystem. Jen will speak about our introduction of the late David Driscoll to the church through the Hiroshima children's drawings. I will leave my reflections here with comment that it may be the role of the arts, culture, and the humanities that adds to our prophetic visioning, voices for hope in our world. We lift the creative energies in which every human is endowed. We lift that foundational, ontological character of that endowment to mind the humanitarian impulses within us all. We support the agency of each of us within the sound of my voice to support the aspirations of us all to find our better and higher selves. It is my great effort to join you in building the community, that beloved community, which in mutuality predicates itself on human flourishing and human betterment. May this be so.
Thank you, Mel, for this testimonial. All Souls is a globally recognized church in the nuclear weapons abolitionist movement, much because of your efforts. Thank you for all of the human betterment you have aided in this community and beyond. This idea of human betterment and human flourishing ties so well to the reading by William Ellery Channon that Reverend Keithan shared earlier. I love this reading. I am so proud that a line from this text is carved into the chancel table in our sanctuary and also adorns every order of service we print. I am a living member of the great family of All Souls. I love that it was also the text source of the All Souls cantata, premiered by former music director Scott Hanaweir and written by Scott Gendel. It feels like if any All Souls member was asked about the most important quote in our identity, it might very well come from this text. My favorite line: I cannot improve or suffer myself without diffusing good or evil around me in an ever enlarging sphere. This line is so evocative to me. I think of a pool of water, steady and still. Then I imagine a drop of water dripping from one of my fingers, creating rippling, beautiful, mathematical concentric circles that did not exist before. This image was actually the inspiration for the multidisciplinary arts experience we created in 2017 that Mel mentioned, called Hiroshima and Introspective. The project, which brought together the worlds of visual art, dance, and music from within and beyond our church community, invited attendees to put themselves at the center of the story by bearing witness to the stories of others, and ask themselves how to create more love, more compassion, and more space in their hearts for the work of peace in the world. The marketing for the event even featured this concentric circle image, the brightest spot at the center, fading slightly with each new ring, a symbol of the rippling effects of Channing's ever-enlarging sphere. The story of the Hiroshima children's drawings was one of the first stories shared with me when I arrived at All Souls in 2013. I remember the images had just come back from an exhibition, and I was elated when I had the opportunity to view them in person. They were full of life, color, innocence, dreaming, thinking about how these children were at school on a day just like any other August day. And then in a noiseless flash, their lives became forever changed. Thinking now of my own child who will start school this fall, and how I want to believe in his safety and preserve his innocence and joy in a world that is so quick to steal those things. These drawings are a reminder of both the resilience and the emotional depth children possess, and also of the ability that art has to speak when words fail. My relationship with Mel Hardy has yielded many wonderful things over the years, but perhaps the richest connection was that to Dr. David C. Driscoll, visual artist, art curator, and widely regarded as the preeminent scholar on African American art. I learned through Mel that Dr. Driscoll's collection included Jacob Lawrence's Hiroshima series, a collection of 8 paintings which accompanied John Hersey's book by the same name. Upon learning this information, my mind began to race with possibilities for an exhibition featuring both the children's drawings and Lawrence's paintings. Both were reflections of the same event, but with very different imagery. I set about making plans to meet with Dr. Driscoll to discuss my ideas. When we met at his home in Hyattsville, he made tea and we ate biscuits and chatted in general about art and music and church. And after listening to my very ambitious pitch, he graciously agreed to allow me to borrow the paintings. We made a simple handwritten agreement at my urging. I was nervous about security and temperature control and art boxes and lighting and all sorts of worries, a la the Thomas Crown affair. I never imagined it would be this easy. And the deal was done. But then Dr. Driscoll asked, "Do you know the inspiration behind Lawrence's paintings?" Going into our meeting, I had assumed the paintings were his imagined depictions of life in Hiroshima on the day of the bombing. I learned that day, however, that the images were Lawrence's depictions of African American life from his own lived experience in Harlem. And then, of course, I saw it. The children playing with the flightless kite, the figures holding up a crumbling ceiling, a family sitting at a destroyed dining table. They could be anyone, anywhere. Through his empathy and the universality of his images, Lawrence removes the ability for us to think of the victims of the Hiroshima bombing as those people over there. It makes them real and human. And when we see that and feel that, our own humanity grows. With this knowledge, Dr. Driscoll invited me into an ever enlarging sphere. of understanding this story. Hiroshima and Introspective told the story of the Hiroshima bombing, the children's drawings, and Lawrence's urban allegory, but it also told the story of the Japanese senninbari, belts made by 1,000 women who each sewed a single knot into each belt as a prayer for soldiers going off to war, told through movement by our partners at Dance Exchange. It elevated the stories of captives and prisoners of war whose words were saved and set to music for chorus, even though they themselves could not be saved. It honored stories of resilience of those who continued to create art under the most impossible circumstances. Attendees were literally surrounded by stories woven together in this immersive arts experience. And by the end, it wasn't just about Hiroshima or World War II or even war in general. It was about our interconnectedness, the vital bonds by which we are bound to one another, and the responsibility we hold in the ongoing work of peace and reconciliation. Peace and reconciliation does not often come easy. And sometimes we must sit with uncomfortable truths, confusing emotions, and the grief of others. I think about the joy on the faces of the children at the Hankawa School as they opened art supplies from the Youth of All Souls some 70 years ago, and the response from our youth when they opened their gifts of gratitude in the form of these beautiful drawings. I think of our Heiwa pilgrims visiting Hiroshima with Japanese natives who had taken them into their homes, shared their tables and their stories with them. I think of those Japanese guests who came to DC, who saw the Enola Gay and wept with their American hosts. I think of the tears of choir members shed when we sing the words of an unknown poet who died in a concentration camp. I believe in love, even when I feel it not. To allow these stories, these relationships, these moments to seep into us and transform us, that too is part of the work of peace and reconciliation, the work that has been brilliantly exemplified by those involved in the Heiwa Peace Project. It is through these experiences that we come to know our own place in the story as part of the great family of all souls. Amen.
My name is Chuck Wooldridge, and my pronouns are he and him. I joined All Souls in 2002, and in 2005, I got involved in the Hiroshima Children's Drawings, now part of the Heiwa Peace Project. Heiwa, by the way, is the Japanese word for peace. You know, I've engaged in a lot of different committees at All Souls, like many of you, but for me, the one ministry that has continuously inspired and challenged and anchored me has been the Heiwa Peace Project. My heart is full of gratitude for so many memories, experiences, deep connections to the many wonderful souls making this work possible. To share a few, for instance, I am grateful to have sung Amazing Grace with Hiroshima school children, playing flutes crafted from the wood of trees surviving the atomic bomb. I am grateful to have placed a commemorative wreath with All Souls members at the cenotaph at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park. The inscription on that cenotaph reads, "Let all souls here rest in peace, for we shall not repeat the evil." Struck by seeing the words "all souls," we recognize these were the same all souls as on our table in the sanctuary where we place the chalice every Sunday. The 50 or more All Souls members who've made a pilgrimage to Hiroshima continue to ask themselves, what are we called to do so this evil is not repeated? I'm also grateful to have accompanied our guests from Japan to both see the Enola Gay and to see the Japanese American Memorial. There we witness their sorrow, their anguish, and their questions. I'm grateful to have known some of our ancestors who started this work at All Souls, this work that is now ours to continue. Bob Freeman, Paul and Jane Pfeiffer, Emily Dyer. The Pfeiffers sold their car when they were no longer driving and donated the funds to this ministry. And it was a fine Cadillac in pretty excellent condition. I'm also grateful for the hospitality repaid by so many All Souls families who took into their homes our Japanese partners when they have been in Washington, D.C. By the way, it was pretty cool and amazing to have danced in Pierce Hall with over 100 All Souls and Risho Kosei Kai members to a live band playing Pharrell Williams' Happy. I was delighted to discover that my dance partner from Risho Kosei Kai knew every word of that song and certainly danced a lot better than I did. Today, I'm really grateful that our vision continues to evolve. As the global pandemic interrupted our plans for a pilgrimage to Japan this year, we've been compelled to reimagine our way forward. The Heiwa Peace Project discussed how our work can better align and support the eighth principle in all our future activities. We also developed an exciting new and promising new partnership with the United Nations National Capital Area. In fact, we're holding our first event on Tuesday focused on the question of nuclear disarmaments. And we have plans to consider working together on a host of other human rights and humanitarian relief issues. On October 24th, we will observe United Nations Day with other UU churches in the Potomac cluster. I financially support All Souls because it is a church, when it says all souls, it can imagine a love and a justice large enough to extend across the Pacific and the Atlantic and to all lands. It can imagine a world free of nuclear weapons and is willing to ask, what can we do to advance this goal? Our mailing address may be Washington, D.C., but our reach can be far beyond. Please support the ministries of All Souls. This morning's offering will now be received.
my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. Oh, hear my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for heaven and for mine.
The words of that hymn say it best. Oh, hear my song, O God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. May it be so, and amen.
This is the sound of one voice, one spirit, one voice. The sound of one who makes a choice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of one voice. This is the sound of voices too. The sound of me singing with you, helping each other to make it through. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices too. This is the sound of voices three, singing together in harmony, surrendering to the mystery. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of voices three. This is the sound of all of us, singing with love This is the sound of